Welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming on. It's great to see everybody. So we're actually going to be recording this because there's a couple of people that couldn't make it this time and they want to hear it. They were very excited. So we're going to record it and send it to whoever couldn't make it. Whoever picked up their treat bag, enjoy. The blessings on the foods are, stuck on the food items, so you have that. That's that. We're going to do the raffle for Sarah Chana's book Moodtopia at the end, so stay tuned for that. We're going to have Sarah Chana is going to speak to us for about 45 minutes, and then the floor is going to be open for questions. What we can do is, if you have a question, you could just write in the chat box that you have a question, and I'll unmute you all in order, and whoever has the question. So I'm very excited for this. Last year, Sarah Chana came to Chicago, and she gave a lecture to a bunch of Chabad Rebbetzins, and I went to it, and it was very interesting. I was even able to implement some of the tips that she gave into my life and my family's life, and that was so great. If you read her bio, Sarah Chana, she's a master herbalist, a lactation consultant, a keynote speaker. She's been on TV many times, and just amazing, really great, and I'm very excited for this. And without further ado, we are going to go. One second, I'm just trying to unmute you.
There we go. Is that better?
That is better, yes.
Perfect. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I know how difficult it is to stop your day and come to an event like this, which is, of course, much more exciting when we're in person. And hopefully around the corner, we'll be back to resuming normal personal interaction. I also want to let you know that on the square, it says that I'm Menachem Silverstein, and that is my son. I'm Sarah Chana, just to make that clear. Next slide, please. Okay, so I was very enthusiastic to share with shluchim around the world about our immune system and how we can approach this global pandemic, because it's all over the world. It's in China, it's in Korea, it's in Iran, it's in Israel, it's everywhere. And the question is, how scared should we be? And is Corona something that we've never dealt with before? And I was in the epicenter. New York City was the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak in the United States. And really, there were very few people that there are very few people I know that didn't get COVID-19. So COVID-19 was probably about 95% of our community. It wasn't even so scary and intimidating to us at first because having masks was not implemented, having gloves was not implemented. And thank God, most of us recovered. And one of the things that makes me very sad about the news media is it's very important to alert us to what's going on, let us know who should be nervous about the virus, but no one's really, from what I've seen so far, taking the time to show us the people that hadn't recovered and hear from the people what they did in order to stimulate their immune system to be able to fight this infection. So coronaviruses have been around for thousands of years, and COVID-19 is just a different structure of the coronavirus. And our immune systems were created by Hashem, God, to be able to fight most infections, not all, but most infections. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you and open your eyes to the world of herbal medicine. It says in Tehillim, Psalms, that Hashem, God, gave grass for the cattle and herbs for the service of man. And the word there is service. And Hashem, God, also says that he put the refuah, the healing in the world before the illness. And if you look at the days of creation, God created plants and trees before man and before pharmaceutical companies. So that has shown me as a alternative medicine master herbalist that plants, the seeds, the roots, the leaves, the flowers are put here to be able to heal us. So those of you that have been to a Havdalah ceremony to break Shabbos to go into the regular work week, we take some cloves or some beautiful spice and we inhale them. Talk about aromatherapy right there. We've been doing it for thousands of years. It's not just for the young hipsters that are on Instagram talking about it. And in the Beis HaMikdash, our holy temple, the Western Wall, when we go to Israel to pray, we had our own Mizbeach or altar where we burned essential oils and plants. So plants have been in our community and in our lives for thousands and thousands of years. It says in the Chumash, the Torah, when Rivka could not become pregnant, she was given an herb and it allowed her to become pregnant. So it's just really very much part of our culture. And even before we begin our PowerPoint presentation, when we went into Israel, when we were given the land of Israel after World War II, the land was barren. And we as Jewish people went in there and we have some of the best crops in the entire world. And we've learned how to grow vegetables in sand in the middle of the desert. So what is our nature? The Jewish people's nature is to be able to bring life to a desert and grow plants. And plants, most of them, are considered herbs. So let's go on to the next slide. There we go. So this is very interesting because this PowerPoint I had created before COVID-19. And when I was teaching parents, because I teach at a lot of schools and I guest lecture at medical schools, I do teach doctors at medical schools in the New York area how to integrate alternative medicine with conventional medicine. And in this lecture, we're not against practical conventional medicine. What we're trying to do is integrate and give strength where they're weak. So this is really what a cough looks like. So you can understand why we have our 6 feet distancing. These are particles that are going to land on somebody or something. And if you're having a discussion with someone, this is what's flying in the air if they cough or sneeze. Next slide, please. So it is estimated that the nasal droplets fly through the air, and that's the primary way how we do get typical colds, viruses, and flus. And it was estimated that the particles can go a minimum of 3 feet in the air. So that's why the CDC and other places decided that there was a 6 feet distance, because we know minimally that a sneeze goes 3 feet and it can go 5 or more. Next slide. So I used to have on my caption, "Isn't it amazing that we don't have to wear masks?" And so it was very shocking for me to take this slide and put it in with masks. I'm saying, yes, nowadays we wear masks. And it's something, it's questionable about how much it helps, but it does make people more aware of their interaction. It makes people feel a little guiltier if they do have a cough or a stuffy nose. So there are some benefits to wearing a mask, not necessarily to prevent infection, but so people can become more aware. Next slide. So we don't live in a bubble, although for this child, it's really fun to be in a bubble. And what our immune system needs to do is we need to have the ability to breathe in and be around viruses and bacteria and not get sick. We have to have a strong immune system that can combat all the invaders that we come into on a daily basis. So before COVID-19 hit, I still do with a lot of children that get chronic strep infections. And they can be one of 8 children, and they're the only ones in the family that get that strep infection. And anytime a child goes into a classroom, there's at least 2 or 3 people that are carrying strep from one of their sisters or brothers. So the question is, who gets the infection and who does not? The one difficult thing about COVID-19 is that we see that it is spread very rapidly, and that's why we need to be more on top of our immune system. Next slide, please. So one of the things that's spoken about all over the internet and all over Instagram, Facebook is superfoods. So the question is, what is a superfood? So for people that were living in World War II during the Holocaust, like any food was a superfood, right? To get any food in your mouth is a superfood. And if you have a drought in a country and all of a sudden we have something growing through the ground, that is also a superfood. So it's a little dramatic to say we want superfoods, but I do share with my clients that to me, a superfood is a food that you can have a small amount of it and it has a lot of nutrients. Like eating a big bag of potato chips, which is super yummy, I mean, you're not getting that many nutrients. But if you have like 3 tablespoons of oatmeal, we know it's got a lot of B vitamins, it can reduce inflammation, it can help with plaque in the heart. So I listed here some superfoods: oatmeal, maple syrup. Now everyone's like, you can't eat sugar, and that's not true. People love sugar. Breast milk, because I'm a lactation consultant, is 85% sugar. And if you want to bribe any kid to do anything, just hand them a piece of chocolate. And most adults also can easily be bribed with chocolate. So we do enjoy sugar in our lives. The question is, what kind of sugars? So I'm like, have some maple syrup. It's got a lot of calcium in it. Have some dates. They say eat 5 dates a day and it reduces the stress in your system. Blackstrap molasses is considered a superfood. It's got more vitamins and minerals in it than your typical multivitamin. Black cherry concentrate. Berries. Right now, it's almost the end of berry season, but eat as many berries as you can. It helps with varicose veins. It helps with hemorrhoids, and it keeps the cell walls of the veins more viable and more strong. Of course, olive oil, fish oil, spinach. I mean, like, who doesn't want to be like Popeye, really? Honey is also antibacterial. And for people that don't like to eat a lot of food, soups and smoothies are phenomenal. So just yesterday, I had a family that got COVID in New York, another part of New York. It hadn't hit them yet. And they were not very hungry. And I said, look, I want you to make a big pot of chicken soup, because it is medicinal. And I want you to put 3 different color onions. I want red, white, and yellow, because they all have different antioxidants in it. I said, I want you to put in broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, butternut squash. So if you take 1/2 cup of chicken soup, you've got powerful proteins, just powerful vitamins and nutrients and protein surging through your body. Next slide. So rebounding is something, I wrote this book called Moodtopia, which we'll talk about in the end. It's all about why God created women moodier than men, and there are benefits to it. And I'm in the middle of writing my book, Moodtopia for Kids. And one of my chapters is on rebounding. So what happens is when you get COVID, it goes in your nose and it gets stuck in your head at first. Anybody that's had it, it begins with a splitting headache. Then you get into the sore throat. And then if you're not taking enough herbs, it can drop down into your lungs, which is what we want to prevent. So you need your lymphatic system working as much as possible, and rebounding or jumping on a trampoline stimulates the immune system to get rid of any toxins. Also, find me a kid and a bed and let them jump and prove to me that not one of them is going to have a smile on their face. Meaning, any kid that starts jumping on their bed gets instantly happy. It's just the way that it is. They're not crying and complaining when they're jumping up and down on your bed. So either we can go on our bed every morning when we wake up or before we go to bed and jump. Or if we don't want to do that, you can buy like a $50 little trampoline and keep it under your bed. Even if you do 5 jumps a day, it'll bring joy to your heart, lower your stress hormones, and help with your lymphatic system. Next slide. So herbs are all the rage. Herbal medicine has a written history of more than 5,000 years old, and 75% of the population worldwide still relies upon traditional modalities of healing, and most of which revolves around herbs. Now, I'm not saying if you go in your backyard and you step on a rusty nail, you shouldn't go get a shot from the doctor. And I'm not saying if you have a massive tooth infection that you shouldn't go get an antibiotic. No question about that. But on a daily basis, one thing we've seen is that if you have high cholesterol, they put you on statins and you never get off of them. So they'll only treat the condition, not get to the root of it. And the same thing with high blood pressure. One thing about herbs is that they integrate with the body. The brain reads herbs as food, takes what it needs and dispels what it doesn't, and it can actually heal conditions, acute and chronic. Acute is that ear infection you never had, or that you wake up with that sinus infection, that's an acute. But if you get 10 sinus infections a season, that's called chronic. Next slide, please. So WHO, which is the World Health Organization, which I know they've been a little questionable lately during COVID, they say the global market for traditional herbal remedies is thought to be around 83 billion a year and on the rise. So I want us to start being with this generation that's allowing herbs to come into our lives. Remember, or maybe you don't know, but garlic and onions are considered herbs. And the question is, can you take too many garlics or onions? Not really. Like if you made a chicken soup on a Monday and put in 5 onions, you wouldn't Tuesday say, oh, gotta hold back on those onions. I already had a bunch of them yesterday. The same thing with parsley, the same thing with turmeric, the same thing with dill. So I'm gonna speak to you about herbs you may not be familiar with, but parsley, dill, cilantro, I mean, you can't OD on it. Don't worry about it. Next slide. So this is what a typical herbalist office looks like. I live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where everything's really small. So I don't have an office as gorgeous as this, but I wanted to tell you what's very fascinating is that some plants we use the roots, some plants we use the flowers, some plants we use the seeds, and some plants we use the stalks and the leaves. So from one plant we can make about 15 to 20 different medicines. So here throughout the year we are able to make medicines. Like soon in the fall we're going to be using echinacea root. Later in the fall we're going to be making our ginkgo. I'm just throwing out these words. So we dry our herbs and or we make them into liquid medicine. Next slide. So I like to use herbs best in tincture form because when you tincture an herb, it has a 10-year shelf life. Now, let me tell you that pharmaceutical companies do not want you to learn how to make herbs that can have a 10-year shelf life. So what we do is we take an herb, and I had brought down my rose petals, but I don't see them here. We take rose petals, we'll put them in a glass jar, pour some grain alcohol over them, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and we have a medicine that lasts for 10 years. And pre-World War I, Jewish women knew all about these herbal medicines. Our Ashkenazi Jews were tortured and repressed by the Nazis. But if you have a Sfardish, a friend, ask them what their bubbies did for ear infections. Oh, they would make this oil and put it in the ear. Our Sfardisha community knows a lot more about herbal healing. They use their mints, their cilantros, a lot of turmeric and paprika. And we as Ashkenazi Jews have lost this knowledge, which is our knowledge. Next slide. So I'm just showing you some examples of tinctures. I have one here. This is a company called Herbalist and Alchemist, and it has a kosher sign on it, which is exciting. The other herbs that I have there do not have a kosher hechsher, but they are allowed by the Rabbanim because they are for healing. So when you take a tincture, this is an herb called cordyceps. It's a medicinal mushroom. You'd pull it up like this, and you would use, that's your medicine. You'd shoot it in a cup, a little shot glass, and down it like vodka. I like my tinctures to be diluted. Let's move on. So herbs come in different forms. Here I have some herbs in capsule form. I tend not to use the capsules as often because they dry out too quickly. So think about that parsley that you bought on a Monday, and you're going to make it into some kind of a dish, and then you get tired and you fall asleep, and Tuesday morning you see your parsley in the fridge and it looks a little limp, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to use it Wednesday, and by Wednesday the parsley's already getting a little yellow, a little gray, and you throw it in the garbage. So once you take a plant out of the ground, it starts to lose its vitality instantly. And so that's why we put it in a grain alcohol, because it preserves the herb for 10 years. But certain herbs like cinnamon, which I use to help lower blood pressure, and I would never travel without cinnamon. Cinnamon is the #1 thing if you get food poisoning, or if you drink some bad water, or if you're in a country, we're not all traveling now, but again, we will soon. Like if you go to Mexico and they say don't drink the water, and you accidentally brush your teeth and drink some of the water, have some cinnamon with you because it will relieve your stomach instantaneously. For teas, I've got some Tulsi tea, which is, which one? This is a peppermint Tulsi. Tulsi is holy basil. And if you wanted to get a medicinal cup of tea, you'd need to put in at least 4 tea bags, pour boiling water over it, let it sit for 20 minutes till it cools, take out those tea bags and squeeze the tea bags, and that's how you would get medicinal tea. So my communities, I work both in California and New York. They're all type A personalities. They work too hard. They don't take rest. They're certainly not sitting down and putting up their feet for a cup of tea. If you are a teetotaler, like they are in England and other places in the world, then taking your herbs in tea form is fabulous. For my neurotic Jewish women, I'm not saying anybody here is neurotic, but if you were, it's easiest to take it in tincture form because it literally takes you 1 second. So my moms that have 7 kids or 8 kids or running around doing 100 things, I find that the tinctures work best and are very consistent. Next slide. So here again, I'm talking about herbs in tea form. So, you know, has anybody heard of the Japanese tea ceremony? The Japanese tea ceremony is amazing. Young girls take up to 2 years to learn how to brew the tea. What's the exact temperature of the tea? How do you present the tea? It is a religion. And it's so interesting because the research that I've done on it is that when you partake in a Japanese tea party, the whole point is to relax, calm down. You're supposed to use all your senses. You're supposed to smell the tea. You're supposed to put it in your mouth and swish it around as if it's a wine tasting party. And you're supposed to swallow it and feel it go down into your digestive system. And then you're supposed to take a deep breath. So cultures all over the world used herbal teas to help people stop the madness of their lives, deal with the heartaches and the pains and the brain that doesn't stop cycling, to stop and experience the joy of sipping a cup of tea. And we've lost that in our culture. Next slide, please. Don't think that I do it, ladies. I'm one of those neurotic New Yorkers. So when we make an herbal combination, we're going to be learning about single herbs in a moment. And I don't expect anybody to be herbalists. At the end of this, I've done many years of training. It's been 28 years of working with plants and people to understand herbal medicine. But I want you to be familiar because Susan Weed, who's one of the top researchers in herbal medicine in America, says that herbs are people's medicine. And she says that I, as an herbalist, can teach everybody about 4 medicinal plants that they can grow on their, in New York, fire escape. If you're outside of New York, in your windowsill or your front porch, and that from those 4 herbs, you can combat probably 95% of physical and emotional challenges that you have, which is great to know. Again, this is not anti-doctor. The question is, you need stitches, go to your doctor. You're having an emotional breakdown, maybe an herb's gonna help you more. You crack your tooth, go to your dentist. But did you crack your tooth because you were in such a bad mood that you tripped and fell because you didn't see that there was something on the ground? Then maybe you need some herbs to calm you down. So herbal medicine works with our body, with our lifestyle, with our challenges. So when we, as an herbalist, use herbs, we use them in combination like a jazz band, because saxophone is great, but you put a little horn with it and it sounds great. Horn and saxophone is great, but you add a little keyboard and maybe a little drum, and you have gorgeous an ensemble which works synergetically together. And as one of my teachers, I hike every day when I'm in California. I'm currently in California. And so I listen to lectures. I do an hour hike every day, and I get an hour's lesson with some of my professors. And they were saying, why can't we use single herbs? And he was saying, because people are so complex that find me one person with one issue, you know what I mean? It's, well, I don't really get along with my cousin, and oh my God, my kid makes me crazy, and oh my God, you should hear about my neighbor, and oh my God, did I tell you that I got a flat tire the other day? The second you start to talk to someone, their lives are so complex, and so is healing their bodies. Next slide. So this is an herb called astragalus. And this is an herb that's used in China, Japan, and Korea to help build the immune system. You can see that it's looks like little slabs, very thin slabs of wood, but it is the root of the astragalus plant. And they put astragalus in their chicken soup. And then it makes your chicken soup even more medicinal. I use this a lot in between illnesses. My clients that have chronic sinus infections or chronic lymphedema or different other conditions that they have. In between, we'll use astragalus to help balance and build that immune system. And the summertime is a great time to use astragalus. Next plant. Echinacea, very interesting. It's a phenomenal plant, and it's an immunomodulator. So what happens a lot, like with the condition called like eczema, is your body will go into this intense overreaction. The skin will break out, and then the immune system stops working. They're like, hey, I'm not going to fix this problem. So it's an immunomodulator. It was very interesting. There was a study done about 9 years ago, and it was all over the news, CNN, Fox, ABC, CBS. I do TV segments for all the networks across the US. And they were like, there was a study done at Harvard University, and it said that echinacea does not help with a cold, does not reduce the symptoms of a cold, and does not reduce the numbers of days you feel sick. I was like, how could this be? Like, I know echinacea. I've worked with thousands of children and thousands of adults. So if you looked at the clinical study, it was a pharmaceutical company that rented out the Harvard lab. And where this one is not a conspiracy theory here. And what they did was they gave echinacea in capsule form. And I told you before, most herbs don't do well in capsule form. They did not adjust the dose to the person's height or weight or age, or whether it was a male or whether it was a female. Basically, it was a completely bogus study. And they said that they could use Sudafed, or what are all those other cold medications? You could use a Tylenol, cold and flu. You could use any medication you wanted with echinacea. Of course, it wasn't going to work. So you have to be a little bit skeptical about clinical studies. We're going to talk about clinical studies a little bit later. So let's go on. But echinacea is one of the herbs I used for my clients with COVID. Now, I will not say that I have a cure to COVID. I do not. Nobody has a cure. but I can tell you out of the 550 clients minimally that I worked with during COVID that took herbs 3 times a day religiously, none of my clients ended up in the hospital. And my clients were between the ages of 2 and 85. So I know that if you nip this thyroid in the bud with herbs, you have a higher chance of not getting such a horrible extreme case of it. Lemon balm is a fabulous herb. It's in the mint family. It's calming and soothing. It's a gentle herb. You can give this to a newborn baby or a 99-year-old client. And this herb is fine. It does not counter-interact any medications. It's calming and soothing. I suggest that people take it before public speaking, before they fly on a plane, and anytime they're exposed to a virus, including COVID-19. This is so gentle, and this is one of the plants that you can make in a tea. It's got a beautiful lemony taste, add a little honey, delicious. Next slide. Now, I got to tell you an amazing story about cleavers. So I live in New York in the winters, and I live in California in the summers. I know I should mix it up, but my kids go to school in New York, and I come to California because I'm an LA girl. And I was in New York, and once my COVID infection lasted for about a month. It came in waves. I would feel horrible. I would get better for a couple of days and feel horrible away. Again, it does come in waves, and that's something very important to know. But when I walked out of my apartment building in New York, cleavers was growing everywhere. Now, I've been in Brooklyn for almost 35 years, and I never saw cleavers growing as rapidly and rampantly as it was in New York during COVID. People's front yards, their alleyways, underparked cars. Cleavers helps the lymphs get rid of infections. Cleavers pushes all the infections through the lymphatic system. And I was like, really, Hashem, God, you're going to give the world COVID-19, but look at what you did. You gave us enough cleavers to treat the entire New York Strait. Now, I don't make my medicines from Brooklyn, New York, because it's a little polluted there, but it just showed me like Hashem put the refuah in the world before the illness, and here it is. Amazing plant. Next slide, please. Fresh milky oats is a wonderful plant. It's for people that get stressed out and people that are exhausted and people that have no strength to continue with their day's activities or fighting an infection. Oats are very fascinating because when people that own racehorses, they feed them oats because what oats does is it gives you energy to run. That's what the horses need to do. And it calms you down because it's high in B vitamins. So you get the energy to do what you need to in the world and calm you down at the same time. So fresh milky oats was one of the herbs I also put in for my clients that were very, very, very stressed out. Next slide. So elderberry is all the rage. It's the #1 selling supplement on Amazon. Elderberry is an amazing form of vitamin C. For years, we used to make elderberry wine, and it was a delicious tasting wine and very medicinal. This is for colds and flus. It's antioxidants, it's anti-inflammatory, and it's got minerals, so it helps with bone health. I wouldn't take elderberry alone because it's not a powerful enough herb. It's a complementary herb like echinacea, milky oats, cleavers, and elderberry would be my great jazz band. So I don't believe the syrup alone is going to do what it needs to, but you can always add it. So sometimes when I have people that don't like the taste of herbs, they are a little bit bitter. You can put some elderberry syrup in a cup, add your herbs to it, down it like vodka, and it's going to taste delicious. Next slide. Now, osha root was the #1 herb that herbalists believed helped with COVID-19. Osha is a plant that opens up the lungs. And what all my clients said that had COVID was when they took Osha, they felt their lungs opening up. And it's very interesting because bears that go into hibernation in the winter when they come out, and they have grizzly bears, they have to run after people that are in the parks eating their food, you know what I mean? They dig up OSHA root and chew on it, and scientists believe it's because it opens their lungs so they can take deeper breaths. So OSHA was not available in the first month of COVID-19. It sold out all over the world. It's now available, and it's available in mixes. Next slide. Yarrow is a very interesting plant, and the reason I have it in here is because the things we were concerned about during COVID is, number one, the infection, number two, the heart, protecting the heart, and number three was that we found that certain community members would get blood clots after they experienced COVID-19. And yarrow is an herb that helps thin the blood and circulate the blood, and it prevents blood from clotting. So after COVID-19 is when I gave clients yarrow, and yarrow is a wonderful tasting tea also. Grows all over the world. Next slide. Now, passion flower, look at that alien looking flower. It was very interesting. I was doing an herbal conference. I was asked to speak in Israel. I saw all these passion flowers and passion fruit growing all over Israel. It's a gorgeous, stunning, bizarre flower. Everybody look it up online afterwards, because it's just, there's no other flower in the world that looks like this strange alien. But passion flower helps you sleep. It doesn't make you so sleepy that you wake up with like a hangover, like from a NyQuil or a sleeping pill. And it calms the body down. So a lot of my clients that were in the middle of COVID were very, very scared, and they couldn't sleep, and they'd be up all night. And one of the benefits to passion flower, and I know no one in this Zoom meeting except for me experiences this, but you know those nights when your brain is circling and circling and circling, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I have to be up at 7, and your brain is thinking about, well, you have to take the clothes to the dry cleaner, and you forgot to buy this. That circling brain that most of us really have can be slowed down with passion flower. And that's another reason I put it in this presentation, because the fear of COVID is sometimes worse than the disease. Now, I do want to say, for people that are over 70, COVID is not a friend. For anybody that has diabetes that is not controlled, COVID is not your friend. Or if you have high blood pressure that is not controlled, it is not your friend. So if anybody has diabetes or blood pressure problems and your medications are not working, there are herbs and diet that you can integrate to get that stable. So that is an important plea. And if anybody has problems with blood clotting, that they clot too easily, then eating a bunch of onions and garlic every single day will help thin that blood. Next slide. So skullcap is my all-time favorite herb. It's for nervous anxiety. It's from the mint family, and I could never do a PowerPoint presentation. This is one of the herbs that you don't have to put in a mix like a jazz band. It's when you get nervous tension, butterflies in your stomach, scared or agitated, or feel that you cannot calm down and relax. You can take skullcap 1 time a day or 3 times a day, and it's just an amazing herb. And I just am always surprised that it's not more known worldwide, because I can give it to kids on their first day of school. I can suggest it for people that are starting new jobs. And I also suggest it for women or men that have lost, that are widows or widowers, and go back out into the dating game again. And they're like, I'm a nervous wreck. I was married to a man for 40 years, Sarah Khanna. I can't even imagine talking to someone else. And they take some skullcap and they call me back and say, you know what? Wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So skullcap is a universal herb for universal problems, and it calms our anxiety down. Next slide. So linden is an herb for the heart, and I discussed with you before that we have to have heart health to be able to deal with COVID and any other virus that we can come across. If you go to France and you get a very fattening, delicious meal with a lot of like buttery sauces, and your stomach is killing you because you ate too much, they will present you with a cup of linden tea, because it helps with digestion and calms the system down. And linden is an amazing plant, safe with most medications also. Next slide. So I'd be remiss to not talk about roses. All rose petals are edible, not the ones you get at your corner bodega or at your florist because they use colorings. But roses are very high in vitamin C. And a lot of different soldiers will tell you that when they were stuck in the middle of the woods without food, that they would chew on rose petals because it was high in vitamin C. And the most important thing about rose is that it's for broken hearts. I talk about rose a lot in my book, Moodtopia, where I talk about people's emotions. Because if you have someone in the hospital that's not well, everyone forgets about the caregivers. It's the caregivers that also need to be taken care of. And we give roses to the people that are sick because just looking at roses brings a healing to the body. But anybody that's caregiving of an older parent or a friend that's not well, or anytime you feel slightly brokenhearted, you need to drink a cup of rose tea. It smells delicious, it tastes delicious, and it's really an important, should be in everybody's cabinet. Next slide. So St. John's wort is one of the only herbs that I'm going to discuss that is contraindicated with certain medications. It was one of the top herbs used by herbalists worldwide, not me, during COVID-19. I use St. John's wort a lot for pain. It's a very famous pain herb. Depression herb, but it's really that kind of depression that gives you body aches, or that sadness that gives you body aches. And St. John's wort is also wonderful for any kind of neurological pain, including tooth pain, shingles, or chicken pox. Next slide. So I want to take a moment and jump away from herbs because the Lubavitcher Rebbe had this campaign called Random Acts of Kindness. And I'm a skeptic about everything, by the way. If everyone's like wearing one color, I'm wearing the other one. So he really was into random acts of kindness. And I was like, yeah, really? That's going to bring world peace? Yeah, right. And then I did research on random acts of kindness. And what the studies show is doing random acts of kindness not only helps the person that you are helping, but the person that does it, it lowers the cortisol stress hormones and it lowers our blood pressure. So especially, I don't know what it's like where you all live, but I just came to LA and everyone's wearing their mask and everyone's terrified and people started being mean here. I'm shocked at it. So I think this time of upheaval politically, socially, with our health, this is a very important time to take on doing random acts of kindness because it's going to help build our immune system, and it's totally free and costs you nothing. Next slide. So colors are also important. Those of us that have been quarantined in our houses, we wear that same house coat or that same black t-shirt that we can get stains on and no one will see. But colors vibrate energy. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or scared or your immune system goes down, bringing colors into your life are really important. If you live in a cold climate where you're wearing a black winter coat, get a turquoise colored scarf. So when you look in the mirror, you're not like, oh my God, I see 3 more wrinkles. Whoa, I didn't have that wrinkle the other day. No, your eyes are directly going to go to that turquoise scarf or that yellow scarf. And even if you're in a workstation, working in your house or back at work and you're in a drab area, just putting some colors, even just some construction paper up. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You can get some linen, even if it doesn't match your room. If you want a vibrant orange pillowcase and that's going to make you feel better, try to include some color in your life because it helps with your moods. And when your moods are more stable, your immune system functions better. Next slide. And I'm going to sneeze speaking about immune system. Hold on. Let's see if there's 2. Maybe there'll be another one. Let's pass by these slides. We don't have time for homeopathy. It's a little too complex. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, is that the end of my slides? Okay, let's go back to that last slide. So I want to just conclude, and then we'll open it up to questions. Herbs are easy to use. They sound very complicated when I speak about them because I'm a master herbalist and this is what I do. But herbs are our gift. And even to add more paprika on your chicken reduces inflammation. It's got natural carotenoids. Carotenoids are for the eyes. I want to tell you something very fascinating. If you eat according to your seasons, listen to how fascinating this is. In the summer, Hashem, God, gives us all the berries. And the berries are antioxidants, but they're water soluble. And what happens is our body absorbs the water soluble vitamins very, very quickly. And then we perspire them out because it's so hot outside. But in the winter and fall, we get our carrots and our pumpkins and our squashes. And those have carotenoids, which helps with night vision because the sun goes down sooner in the winter. They're also fat-soluble antioxidants, so they stay in our system longer and help keep us warmer in the winter. So berries cool us down in the summer, and all those orange vegetables keep us warm in the winter. So it appears to me that Hashem, God, even in this crazy world, oh my gosh, like every day it's getting a little more nutty to me. Hashem has put our healing right here for us. So I also want to tell you that deep breathing is something people need to get before they get COVID, and if they get it after they get COVID. So I have a Mashpia mentor who's an older man and is brilliant. And he used to say to me, Sarah, can you stop for 1 minute and take a deep breath? And I'd go, yeah, I'm done. Let me go on to my next thing. I had 7 kids. I have a girl, 5 boys, and a girl in a teeny apartment in Brooklyn. Like, really? I have to breathe? And what we find is that taking a deep breath in, holding it, and exhaling, you can do it in the bathroom. You can do it when you're waiting to call someone on the phone. I used to say when people drove a lot, when you get to a stop sign, inhale and exhale. 1 deep breath for the day. When you go to the ATM machine, you stick in your card, inhale, pull it out, exhale. But we found that people that have used their lungs more also do better with, besides COVID, pneumonias, colds, flus. Our lungs are oval shaped, and we tend to just use the top part of our lung, but the more you deep breathe, you can use the bottom part of your lung. So in conclusion, don't be afraid of herbs. They're part of Jewish culture for thousands of years, thousands of years. The Rambam talks in one of his Sforim, his books, that a daily bath with herbs and a cup of tea is all you need to stay sane. And he was talking about emotional health way back when. So include herbs. Don't be afraid of them. Include random acts of kindness. And remember to breathe, and you're immune. Oh, and rebound. Jump on your bed sometimes when no one's looking. And that's enough to start to build your immune system. So let's open it up to questions and see what people's thoughts are out there. Unmute. And we can't hear you.
All right, there I am. Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Everyone's unmuted. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. That was really interesting. If anybody has any questions, now is the time.
I have a question.
Yeah, go, Janet.
Is it possible for you to send us the slides via email?
Sure. I don't mind that at all. I allow you to have the slides via email. That would be fine with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And I was also involved in community theater up until about 3 years ago, and there was one herb I used all the time to help me memorize my lines. I don't know if it was mind over matter, but it worked.
Which herb did you use?
I was trying to think of it while you were talking, and I cannot
Was it
remember it.
rosemary, bacopa,
No,
ashwagandha,
no, it was not a long, weird name.
holy basil?
No. It was something I saw advertised, and I figured, why not try it? And I used it. Whenever I was in a play, I
Excellent.
would use this one particular herb all the time. It
Well, there's
helped.
two. That's amazing. There's two ways to get more blood flow to your brain, which helps with memory. Number one is standing on your head. So anybody out there that can stand on your head, go ahead and do that. For the rest of us that can't stand on our head, there is an herb called rosemary, which you can put on your fish. You can put it on your chicken. Make sure you cut it up though, so you don't have those big stickers. But rosemary is an herb that increases blood flow to your brain. And there's another herb called bacopa, which is used in Ayurvedic medicine, and it also helps bring blood flow to the brain. So there you go. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's important for all of us.
Okay, anybody else have a question? I have a quick question. Passion flower, can I give that to kids just like by itself?
Yes, you can. I would suggest you mix it with lemon balm, because
Okay.
lemon balm is calming and soothing, and they work beautifully together with passion flower. And from a company called Herb Farm, you might be able to get a sleep mix. When you want to give herbs to kids to help them sleep, you can't give it to them like, oh my gosh, it's 5 to 9. Everybody needed to be in bed by 8:30. You need to start giving the calming herbs around dinner time, and then about a half an hour before you want the kids to go to sleep. So you've got to give it at least twice. And then if they it's now 10 o'clock and they're still not sleeping, you can give them another dose of it, because passion flower mixed with lemon balm is calming and soothing. And it works very well.
Thank you. All right, anybody else have any questions? Okay, so we're gonna do the quick raffle. Whoever is the lucky winner is gonna get Sarkana's.
I have a question though. The question would be, how did the Jewish heritage lose this? And I want people to understand that, unfortunately, for the Ashkenazi Jews, after World War II, most of our elders were no longer with us. And I want everybody to know that when you read old texts about written by Jewish philosophers and Jewish history, it was so much part of our custom that no one ever thought it would get lost. And what happened was, after World War II, Jews were fleeing. They were running to Israel. They were running to China. They were running to Canada. They were running to Chicago. They were doing anything to get out of the scary times that they were in. So there's a book called Gluckle of Hamlin. Has anybody read it? It's from the 1600s. And I'm going to say it very quickly, and then you do your raffle, because I really want people to understand our history of it. So Gluckle was a woman that had, I think, 12 or 14 children. And unfortunately, her husband passed away, and they had a great relationship. She was a German Jewish woman. And it was a custom of the men that they would write your lineage, because we didn't have a smartphone and internet. They would write the lineage. This is your father, this is your grandfather, this is your father-in-law, so that when a couple got married under the chuppah, they would have their lineage. So her husband passed away, and it was not the tradition for women to do it. But she's like, my kids need to know their history. So being a woman, she wrote like a 200-page book on her history and her family, right? And what's amazing is that what Europeans used to do to Jews was they would have book burnings. They would say, Jews are smart, they're intelligent, they're all the doctors, they know everything. What we're going to do is we're going to burn their books, and they're not going to be smart. That's one of the reasons we have the oral Torah besides the written Torah. But they would take the books in the middle of the city, and they would pile them up, and they would light them on fire. So somehow a German soldier saw Gluckel's book and he said, a woman can't write. Women in the 1600s don't read and write, but Jewish women were always taught to read and write. So he took the book and it ended up going in a museum. And it was only hundreds of years later that it was translated into English, which is fascinating. But why do I love to bring up this book? It's such a great book to read. Is in there, she talks about yarrow flowers as much as she talks about Shabbos. She's like, this is what we did on Shabbos, and this is what we do with yarrow flowers, and this is what we do for Sukkot, and we take this plant. So even back in the 1600s, Gluckel was including herbs in her life as much as she was talking about Jewish traditions. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
want to give back to Jewish women in our generation the gift of herbal knowledge, because it's for us. It's for us to heal ourselves. Okay, go on. I just wanted to share that great story.
It was, yeah, it was very interesting. All right, let's go. And Janet. Janet, you won.
I won?
Yeah,
Oh my God, thank you. Woo.
there you go. I'll be in touch with you about getting it over to you, okay?
Okay, great.
All right.
Wow, thank you.
Excellent.
That's great. All right, thank you so much, Sarah Hannah, and thank you everybody for coming on. I hope you all enjoyed
This
it.
was
as much as I did.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
I
Thank you
enjoyed it.
very much.
It was really nice.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you, Shirley.
very much.
And
Thank you.
Razel for joining us.
Bye.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
I took notes even.
I took a
I
lot
love
of notes.
it.
Well,
So
thank you
nice.
so much for
Fascinating.
sharing your slides. Thank you
I
so
have a
much.
rebounder in my basement.
Oh, that's right. You do.
I bought a bouncer about 35 years ago from Kmart. And about 10 years ago, I had the bounders came out, right? And I had my handyman put the hook on it to make it like the $85 rebounder. I don't want to tell you what I paid at Kmart for it, but okay. I've actually used it. I'm going to go back to using it again.
Go
Thank you.
back to using it, really. And especially if you're in a bad mood, which again, I could be the only one of us that ever gets in bad moods. But if anybody else can relate and you get in a slightly bad mood, it's impossible to get off a bouncy bounce and be in a bad mood. So it's just something to keep in the back of our minds. You know, we're so quick to use medicine, and medicine does help people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an anti-medicine person. I want it to be used in the right way. But when we can use things like random acts of kindness and jumping on a bed or a rebounder, like, really, why don't we try that and integrate that a little bit more?
So
What
if you
about
get-
jump rope?
Oh,
If you can jump rope, that's just as phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best ways to move your body because your whole body is involved. You know, like I go to the gym and I'm like this with my weight. Oh, I'm so tired, right? But you jump rope and you're using every cell in your body. That's a great idea. And hula hooping, that became very fatty for a while. You have to keep that hula hoop. I couldn't quite coordinate it, but it was really a great thing because your whole body. So when we can include our whole body, we get in better moods quicker.
I have a hula hoop.
I'm going
There
to
you
go to
go.
Ricky's backyard. She has a bouncing thing there. I'll kick the kids off.
There
We
you
put the
go.
hula hoop in the backyard for the kids last week. I guess I should reclaim it again.
There you go. There you go. It was
I
so
love the
funny.
belly bounce on it.
It was so funny because I went to my MD because I'm not anti-doctor, even though I do alternative medicine. And, you know, my yearly visit, hey, how you doing? And, you know, I'm very organized, OCD. I have my little list and I'm telling him everything. And he says to me, do you ever just let go? I'm like, I'm a mother of 7. I'm a bubby. Of course, I have a medical office. He's like, can you just put on some music and dance, Sarah Hannah? I'm like, really? That's your prescription? He's like, yeah, that's your prescription. So, you know, we don't think about it. Like, sometimes just put on some music and dance. Bounce on it on your bouncer, and you'd be surprised about what it does to our emotional health and our immune system. So maybe that's our message for today. Just like let go a little. I mean, the world is so tense. I don't know what's going on in your area, but we had rioting, we had stores broken into, our presidential election, whatever, COVID. I mean, it's just tension, tension, tension. And we got to let it go, because then we can see clearer, so we can really decide what our views are. So that maybe that's a little bit of our message today, is jump, hula hoop, let go a little bit, and you'll be surprised. Your body will really thank you for it.
We're a suburb of Chicago, and a lot of stuff was going on in Chicago.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. You know, I mean, it's a really scary time. It's a scary time. So we've got to like keep the tension in our body. You know, when I work with my clients, I always tell them that when you work with an herbalist, our goal is to maintain the health that you have and not let our emotions break down our physical body. You know, how do we go through stress and not get an ulcer? How do we go through stress and not get a migraine? That's what herbalists are working on. Bad things happen to good people, and stress happens all the time, but how can we go through it and not let it affect our body? And so we can do it emotionally, but our herbs kind of sneak in there and give us that hand holding during hard times. And that's what I want people to know about. Like clients will say to me all the time, they'll take Skullcap for a month and go, Sarkhana, I literally am calmer. I'm literally calmer, but am I addicted to it? I'm like, it's in a mint family. Go get some Persian woman and ask her if she's concerned about drinking her mint tea every day. She's been drinking it for 75 years. You know what I mean? So if we need a little bit of Skullcap, you know, stick it in our bra, keep it with us everywhere we go. Nothing wrong with that. Do you see what I'm saying? So these herbs that I discussed today, they're herbs that you can take for 3 weeks, forget for 3 weeks, go back and take for 4 weeks. You see what I'm saying? That's, you know, like when you're on a psychotropic drug or a high blood pressure medicine, you really are not supposed to stop it. But with herbs, you can have a great 3 days and the worst 3 days of your life. That's the time to take some of your herbs. Make sense? That's the time. You know, like I tell my clients, even during Sukkot, you're eating outside, and especially in Chicago, it's something that's gonna get really cold during Sukkot. You know, even during the Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, your schedule is so crazy. Take some herbs. You don't need to, at the end of the holidays, end up getting pneumonia or a sinus infection, right? So that's how we use herbs. We use herbs during our good times and then during our hard times to make sure that our bodies stay in line. And that's what the message that I really want everyone to understand, that they're gifts. They're here for us. And we've forgotten about them. That's all.
Okay, I'm going to have a cup of tea.
Absolutely. There you go.
Do you have to drink it hot, by the way?
No, you don't have to drink it hot.
Person. I don't like hot things.
You don't have to drink it hot. It can be cold. It can be tempered. It can be however you want it. The herb's going to function in the body exactly the same.
Okay.
That's the important thing to know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Ricky.
Wonderful.
Thank
That's
you.
really, really
Thank
nice.
you,
Thank you,
ladies.
Ricky, for
Nice
arranging it.
seeing everybody.
All the best. And I give blessings to everybody for a good, sweet year, which is right around the corner. Our next year should be filled with revealed blessings, and everybody's life should just go a little bit smoother. I think that's our biggest bracha for this upcoming
Amen.
year.
Amen.
And when you dip your apple in the honey, honey's got antibacterial properties, and the skin of the apple's got all those antioxidants, and it's a good fiber. So there you go. We've got our health right there, given to us from Hashem.
And thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. All the
Thank
best.
you.
And thank you for putting this
Bye.
together, Rifki. All the best.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.